Hey everybody, my name is Florian. Today I will show you how to create this smoky flower effect using Cinema 4D, X-Particles and TurbulenceFD. I used this technique on a project I was working on recently and thought it was worth sharing. Actually, you don't need X-Particles to achieve this effect, but I found it's quite nice to drive turbulence with it, and maybe you can use this technique on one of your own projects. Okay, let's jump straight into Cinema 4D and start with modeling the flower petal. I will make a plane 5 by 10 in size, maybe 1 and 2 segments. Put this into a subdivision surface with 3 subdivisions. I put this into a null so I can add multiple deformers to it. I will start off with FFD deformer. Actually, I will make it a child of the plane and fit to parent, up the Y size to 1, and make 5 points in X. Switch to point mode, and let's shape the petal a little bit. I want this side to be more like this. That's looking alright. Then on top of that, I will start off inserting my deformers into the actual plane by alt-clicking. Oops, sorry, I always get mixed up with those two shortcuts. Shift-clicking the while I add the deformer will put it, make it a child, and insert the right size for the deformer. I will up the Y value, so because with 0 as a value in the size, you sometimes get wrong results. I think I have to twist this, rotate this by 90 degrees, fit it again, and yeah, taper it down. Okay. That looks like a flower petal already. Maybe let's put those points a bit to the bottom so it has a nice curved shape, and also those outer points down to the bottom. Maybe not so much, like this probably. I'll make those guys invisible. And maybe add a bend deformer. Let's keep it a child for now. Yeah, it's rotating to the wrong direction. It needs to be rotated 90 degrees into this and into this direction, and make it a bit bigger here and here as well, and just put it on here. Alright, so this, should it look like this or like this? Let's make it that way. Doesn't matter, you can do it as you wish. I will make this bend deformer also invisible. So this is our basic petal shape. So I will put this whole thing into a cloner, but before I do that, I will, by pressing 7 and moving this, I will move the anchor point of the null roughly into the beginning of the actual petal, and then throw everything into a cloner. So I want it to be a radial cloner. Start with 0 radius for now on the XZ plane, and up the radius a little bit. So this looks very flowery already. Okay, I will add then a plane effector to it, deactivate the position. I just want to animate the rotation of the petals. So they start off more or less like this, As you can see, there is a slight distortion going on these points. I think it is because there is some, yeah, this deformer was a bit too small. So this plane effector is basically driving our animation. Here's another strange thing going on. Maybe it's the bend, no, the FFD, yeah. All right, so I will make turn on the fall off to the plane deformer, plane effector, linear fall off, make the size 5 by 5 by 5, so we can see it. Set the fall off to 100%. So if we move the plane effector through the flower now, we see our petals are opening up and animating the flower very nicely. So we are at frame 0. Let's start here and quickly keyframe the position for the plane effector like this, and then let's say go to frame 35 and keyframe the position here. So that looks all right. Maybe let's do it a bit quicker. Okay. Then on top of that, I will add a delay effector that is set to spring. So we get this nice kind of secondary animation after they've opened up. They will wiggle around a little bit. Yeah, that looks really cool. We can make those guys invisible as well. This looks like a nice flower opening animation. So let's put all of those guys into a new null and put this null into a connect object. So this is treated as if it would be one single object. Deactivate the weld and duplicate the connect and make it editable. So what we have now is a duplicated geometry that has no animation on it. What I want to do, I want to drive the animation of this geometry by the animation of whatever is inside this connect object. And this works because they have the same amount of polygons. So I will just add a, where is it? Pose morph tag to the to this connect geometry. I will call it flower petals. On the pose morph, I will turn on the points mode, delete the base the pose 1, pose 0 that was already inside, and just drag the connect object in there, and say yes, I want it to be driven absolutely by this connect stuff. So if I scrub through play the timeline, now my actual flower petals object that had no animation earlier is now being animated by whatever this guy is doing. The thing is, if I scrub through the timeline backwards and forwards, it's not behaving properly because we have also a delay effector inside. So we need to bake this animation by adding a point cache tag to the flower petal, store the state, and calculate it. All right, now we can delete the pose morph again, and if we scrub through the timeline, you see our animation is baked into the point cache tag. So that's perfect. What we want to do now, we want to have a texture to emit from, to emit our X-particles from. So let's just quickly do a radial circular gradient in our luminance channel, drag it onto the geometry, and yeah, you see what our problem is now. The UV for these petals are like 5 times. It's one UV that's being laid out onto each of these single petals. We do not want this. We could just go into the material tag and set it to flat, and rotate it by 90 degrees maybe, oops, and fit to object. The thing is with X-Particles, it doesn't recognize any other UV projection than UVW, so this is not an option that we can use for our X-Particle setup. So we will go back to UVW with that one and really quickly switch to BP UV edit mode, drag our flower petals in here and switch to polygon mode, so our projection options become available. Command A to select them all. If we now press the frontal button, whatever our viewport is seeing is being projected into the UV square, basically. So we just go to our top view and press frontal again. So we have now a nice UV layout for our flower. Let's make it a bit bigger. You want to try that the center point of the petals is actually in the center of the of this UV space here. So if we can check that by quickly adjusting our gradient here, yeah. If I change it so it's just a small circle, you see it's a bit off the center, so we can just drag our flower until it really is in the center point. Yeah, that's exact enough for now. So let's just switch back to our normal viewport layout. So X-Particles is going to emit only from the white parts of the texture. So we want the white part to grow from the inside to the outside. We're going to frame 0 and just maybe make 4 points. Starting off with a very small circle, so there's actually nothing visible on the geometry. And set a keyframe. And then we go to, let's say, frame 40 and drag all our gradient knots over to the right. So we want the gradient to be just over all of the petals. That's about here. Set another keyframe. If we're going to have a look at it, let's deactivate the lines. Yeah, this looks nice. So the particles are only emitting from the white surface. This looks cool. That will work. Let's add a little bit of turbulence onto the gradient so it's not that even. You see the turbulence distorts the gradient on the first keyframe, so it's off the center. So we will maybe keyframe the turbulence as well. At frame 0 there should be no turbulence, and then when it's around here, 8% turbulence should kick in. Let's check that. Yeah, that looks all right. And then we can see that there's still a bit left over. So we will just take our gradient points and move them a bit more to the side. All right. Cool. Perfect. So this is looking good. We can now add our X-Particles. I'm using X-Particles 3. It doesn't make a difference if you're on X-Particles 2. There are no specific options that I'm using that are only available at X-Particles 3, so you should be fine. Let's set our speed to 1 for a second, and our emitter shape is going to be an object, which is our flower petals object. We're emitting from the texture, which is this texture, so you just have to drag it into the texture tag field. By the way, you cannot drag it from the materials manager, you have to drag it from the object manager. Our emit channel is our luminance, because we created our gradient in the luminance channel, and our color channel is not going to be used, so it doesn't matter what we set here. And we want to stick our particles to the source object. If we make our flowers invisible, you can see our particles are being born and are sticking on the flower petals. If we had this option deactivated, the particles are floating away from wherever they are born. If I set the speed to 0, they're just staying there in space wherever the petals were at the moment they've been born. So we want it to be stuck on the source object. Okay, let's add more particles. Let's say 10,000. That's looking not too bad. Maybe 50,000. Yeah, that looks like it's more or less evenly distributed and dense enough for our TurbulenceFD simulation. I will go on and cache the X-Particles, just so it doesn't have to calculate the X-Particles all the time, and we can scrub through the timeline without seeing anything strange going on. Okay, so now we can scrub through the timeline, and everything looks cool. What I have forgotten, I will deactivate the cache for a second. We do not want our particles to live forever. We want them to actually die, maybe within 10 frames. Maybe even 5. Cool, and give them a variation of, let's say, 2. Yeah, I think that works. So now we can again build the cache, overwrite it. I don't know if you can hear that, but my neighbors are renovating their house, so there's a little bit of hammering going on there. Okay, so this looks cool. This is where our TurbulenceFD is going to emit very soon. So let's just add a TurbulenceFD emitter tag onto our X-particle emitter. We want to emit temperature. It doesn't make a difference if you emit temperature or density. Those are basically the same things as far as it goes in the TurbulenceFD simulation. You just have to remember, if you want to emit density, you have to activate it in the TurbulenceFD container as well, because by default it's not set to active. So if you're emitting density, just turn this guy on. Our container right now is way too big for this little flower, so I will just reduce the size, maybe 30, 30, 30. Yeah, this fits nicely into the container. Let's put this on top. And I will cache to my SSD. Okay, and yeah, let's just have a look at how this looks when it's being simulated. Okay, we can see that this is quite a low-res simulation going on here. So it doesn't really look like anything right now. So let's set this to 0.4 maybe. Those values depend on the size of your scene, but generally just watch out if you're calculating it on your graphics card. Watch out that this GPU memory setting does not exceed your actual GPU memory. So let's quickly re-simulate this. This looks a bit better. Okay, so our particles are emitting turbulence. Turbulence is generating this temperature liquid. Actually, I think it's a liquid simulation, so it's actually behaving like liquid should, or fluids, sorry. So the temperature is rising up way too fast. We don't want it's escaping our simulation really quick. So we can change that by going to the temperature tab and change the buoyancy value maybe down to 5 and resim it really quick. So the temperature will not rise as fast as it did before, but it's living way too long. The temperature is like still hitting the top edge of our container. We don't want this. Actually, I just want it to live for a couple of frames, so I will set down the half-life to 5 frames. So you can see the temperature is now becoming invisible much faster. Yeah, that's looking good. I can, because there's not much going on below our flower, I can even move the actual container a bit upwards, maybe like this. All right. So what I want to do right now, the particles are born and behaving as there would be nothing to hold them back, nothing to interact with. So the shape of the flower is not really visible if it's only TurbulenceFD, like only smoke. So what I will do, I will put my flower petals into a cloth surface, which gives them, set the subdivisions to 0 and give it some thickness, maybe 1 centimeter. If I turn it on, you can see that now our geometry has actual thickness. We need that for X-Particles, for TurbulenceFD to recognize it as a collision object. So we're going to set the cloth surface. This is important, not the actual flower petals geometry. The cloth surface needs to be set as a collision object. I will also turn down the radius for that to 0.2, so there's the calculation works properly. I will make this invisible, and let's just rerun the simulation. So now you see the clouds are the temperature is being born inside the and beneath the cloth surface and being pushed down by it. So okay, everything looks a bit thin here. So I will change our viewport preview to the smoke shader, deactivate the fire shader here in the rendering channel, rendering tab, and our smoke shader should be our temperature. And let's go back here. I don't know if you can see this, but you can see here a very brownish presentation of the clouds. So now, as it's set to white, you can better see what's going on here. Can up the thickness maybe to 50, so you can really see what's happening. Our particles are born, our fluid is born and being pushed down by the cloth surface. That's looking cool. But then we're getting those kind of bending artifacts in the simulation, those kind of almost looks like anti-aliasing issues within the simulation, but we can get rid of those by upping the lowering the voxel size in the container tab. But we will not do that. We will just up-res our simulation to more or less calculate voxels in between those spaces. This will even the this area out. But before we do that, I want to add a little bit of turbulence, maybe 10 centimeter of turbulence and maybe 5 in a vorticity. And yeah, let's try that. Let's simulate it like this. Okay. I'll just quickly deactivate the bounding boxes here. This is not looking too bad. What I don't like is that as our outer parts of the leaves or of the petals are being built by the smoke, our inner parts are already invisible because the half-life is set to such a low value. So I will keyframe the half-life maybe here. Let's have it at 15 frames maybe. Keyframe it, and then here let's go down to 5 frames again. Resimulate. So we're keeping our flower shape a little bit longer here, and it's better distinguishable what this actually is. All right. So I'm satisfied with the simulation now. It's still a very low-res simulation, but we won't care about this here for the sake of the tutorial. I will just up-res the TurbulenceFD simulation, change this to our CPU, and change this one to up-res. The standard up-resing settings here are fine for this sim. So let's just press start. Oops. Yeah, thing I forgot. You have to cache velocity if you want to use the up-resing. Each voxel needs to have a velocity value attached to it, which also makes the cache size become bigger, ×4 or so. So you will see that right now the cache has 100 megabytes, and after I've cached it again with the velocity, it even went to 500 megabytes. So the simulation will look exactly the same, but it's just more information inside the simulation. So now I can use the up-res, and I will skip this part so you don't have to wait for a minute. Okay, so this is done. It took 1 minute and 7 seconds, and the bending is gone. Looks quite nice. Smoky and wispy. Cool. So let's have a quick look at how to light this and render it. We'll just add a spot omnilight here. Make it maybe light blue or maybe orange, and set the shadows to ray traced. I think it doesn't really make a difference if it's set to ray traced or shadow maps. It has the same render speed on both of them. It doesn't look any different on whatever you choose. Oops. And add another maybe bluish light here. Not so bright. Give both of them maybe a fall off. I'll turn on interactive render region so you can see what I'm actually doing. Don't mind this watermark. I don't have the licensed version of TurbulenceFD at home, so this is just a free learning edition. Maybe for this we can go down with the quality. Alright, that doesn't look too bad. Maybe give it a proper decay radius. Yeah, so that looks as if it works. fluffy clouds. You can, after you've calculated everything and simulated everything, you can still change the look of it by, for example, adding subgrid detail. This also only works if you have a velocity cached with your simulation. So you can set velocity displacement to maybe not to 20, maybe to 1 or 0.1 or something, to add some more detail that's being calculated on render time and not on simulation time. So if we compare 0 to 1, it's pushing the clouds into their direction of movement. So this is with velocity displacement turned on. You see we're getting these little wisps here and here, like kind of fake detail that if we turn it off, some of this stuff will just disappear. You see everything looks more blurred out and not so detailed anymore. So this is a good way to get some fake detail that you didn't actually have in your initial simulation. At the cost of render time, of course, but I think render time is you prefer having render time at actual render time than on simulation time, because with when you simulate a higher res explosion or flower or whatever you're doing with TurbulenceFD, you can easily reach your GPU memory limit and really easily crash your computer. So sometimes it's just easier to have some detail added afterwards. I think it's a bit too thick now. We can go back with the thickness of our cloud. Yeah, this looks not bad. I think you get the general concept of how this works. So I hope you enjoyed watching the tutorial, and yeah, see you soon.